Hello everyone, and welcome back to our fifth part of our tutorial on making wargaming terrain from broken toys. In the first four parts, we've selected our pieces, we've configured them on our base, we've added ground texture, we've base coated, highlighted, and shaded just about everything here that's part of our model. But the one thing that's missing from any car wreck that's been in the elements for a while is rust. And so today we're going to talk all about how to apply it and how to make it begin. Very important thing we need to discuss about rust is where and how it forms. If we just put
rust anywhere on this model, it might not look so convincing. It'll look like somebody tried to paint rust on it. So we need to make sure we put our rust effects in those areas where the rust is most likely to form. Typically, rust forms with moisture, right? Because it forms when the oxygen in water oxidizes the iron that's in the steel. So you're going to find your rust in places where water tends to collect. So usually the very top of an edge, like this hood or the top of this windshield or these ridges along the top here, higher points on the fenders, those are unlikely to see as much rust, at least not compared with, say, this area down here by the wheel wells, or, this area in the back of the chassis. You'll also find a lot of rust in areas close to the ground because there's a lot of moisture there too. So the bottom half of these hubcaps are likely to be affected, as would the bottom areas of this jerry can that we have here. Those are all areas that we're probably going to treat with rust. It's also important to note that rust is going to form where water runs down off of something. So if we turn this sideways and angle it just so, there, that's the angle that I wanted, you can see when you look at this surface that the water will run straight off of it and connect with this hubcap about halfway down. So we're going to see a lot of rust forming in areas where it drops off. Similarly, you're going to find rust in areas where the water hangs before it drips. So regions like this in the wheel wells are going to have quite a bit of rust on them. So these are the areas where we're going to apply it as opposed to just putting it all over the model in random locations. The way that we do this is astonishingly simple. This is very old school. Almost all wargamers know how to do it. It's a technique called stippling. And what you do when you stipple is you take an old brush, and I think if I turn this in the right direction, you guys will get a good look at the bristles. And you can probably see those bristles are kind of matted outward. That's because when you stipple something, you smash it perpendicular to your surface. So don't do this with a brand new brush. You're going to want to use an older one. And the older it gets, the better it spreads out. And as the bristles spread out, it gives you a more randomized, almost like a sponge-like pattern. So what we're going to do is we layer paints in order to create the rust effect. So the very bottom level is going to be just plain old brown. Or if you'd like, we could probably mix a little bit of red with it. That'll save us a step. So we have some red and we have some brown. We'll mix that together to get kind of a rust brown color to start. Then we'll mix red with some orange, right? So then we're going to have some reddish orange. And then we'll just finish with bright orange in the spots where the rust is the most advanced. So we're going to get our model out of the way for a second. We're going to do a little bit of mixing. And as you can see, we're going to have some water here. And we have our old scrap cloth here that we're going to use because we're just going to be using straight paints. One of the nice things also about using an artist's acrylic is that it has a thicker consistency than what you're likely to find with, say, for example, like a Games Workshop or a Reaper paint that has more of a liquid medium. Those are generally made for figures. For terrain, we don't have to be quite that fussy. All right, that is a rust brown that I can live with. So now it's time for us to start work with our stippling. We're going to get our stippling brush. We're going to get to work on our model. And all you do is lightly dip it into your paint. And then you just start working.
All right, that'll work for our dark brown. So now we're going to move up a color. And we're going to mix some red and some orange. So primarily, we'll go about half red and half orange. And we get right back to work. All right. You may have noticed that just at the end here, there were a couple of areas that looked a little too orange to me, so I just went back to my rust brown and went over them again. Very last color that we got to do is just a little bit of straight orange. And this you use sparingly because you don't want an orange car. All right, so there is our rust effect. Boy, that looks really terrible, doesn't it? It's been out in the woods forever. Yeah, very, very good. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we've rusted it out, we're going to have to get to work on some vegetation, and then we'll be finished. So this is pretty much the end of this part right here. So I guess we'll finish it up with vegetation in part 6.